Awesome. It is Fridays in Fintech, and we have an amazing guest today, the co-founder and CEO of NayaOne, uh, God, Karan Jain. I,
You got it.
Kar- yeah, I did. Okay, okay, amazing. Great to have you here. A little bit about our wonderful guest is Karan. I saw you spent close to a decade at, you started out at other financial services, KPMG, consulting, but then you became director of head of technology actually at Westpac Institutional Bank, and you were there for close to 10 years or over 10 years.
Yeah, well, who's counting? Time flies.
Amazing. And then you went on to co-found and become the CEO of NayaOne, where you guys really focus on you provide a single point of access for financial institutions to access fintechs and other data sets to create kind of like a sandbox environment. But it is great to have you here.
Jake, thank you for having me. Love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind. But we really ask the hard questions here on Fridays in
Awesome.
FinTech. And the hard question is, you're from the UK, do you prefer pineapple on your pizza?
You know what? I do. And that's something I picked up in Australia. So I grew up in
Really?
Australia. Yeah, yeah. I moved
Oh,
to UK about 10 years ago. So it's not that I order all the time that my got pineapple on my pizza, but every now and then, I'm not gonna throw it out.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. The thing is, it's the same with me. If it's there or if it's like one of their specialties, I'll like, okay, cool. It's a nice mix up, versus
Yeah. More
yeah.
artichoke than a pineapple guy, but I'm not gonna say no
Oh,
to a pineapple.
artichoke.
Already.
Artichoke. All right, artichoke's good. Got any favorites from your side?
Well, no, artichokes on the pizza. That's good.
For sure. Um, so I'm curious, kind of, I saw your journey into working at Westpac. What drove you to lean into that? Because I saw you were at another kind of financial services company, but what kind of attracted you to moving into banking and that sort of sector and in
Yeah,
Australia?
yeah, look, so I studied accounting and engineering,
Hmm.
and as an accountant, I ended up at KPMG. There I got exposed to the R&D tax team, and then I saw what banks were doing R&D. That's where I got kind of exposure into what banks were building and where the innovation lied. And also looked at physical engineering companies and what they were building. So there's Australia's there's a big sector of mining. So you see all the mining innovation that's going on. So I actually tried my hand at mining first. I absolutely did not last. Mining engineering and technology side
Oh,
of
oh,
things.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like
Not
mining.
not driving trucks. Yeah, although that would have been very fun. And then moved into telecoms, where I got really deep into the data. The complexity they have over
Hmm.
in telecommunications, banking, and financial services haven't
Hmm.
seen it yet. And then insurance, and then ended up in banking as I went through. What the two things that I really liked as I got into banking um, was the ability to connect into the real life, because end of the day you're serving people like you and I, right?
Hmm.
So no matter how much technology it is, no matter how much in the back end how much infrastructure is, at the end of the day it all rolls up to an impact to how well are you serving your customers, which are you and I, right? So that's kind of like something that really I enjoy. And the other thing, I was fortunate enough to work on products and transformations that because of my engineering and accounting background, I'm not always into what's the latest tech, but more so how can we apply tech to solve the problem in the best and most efficient way. So that kind of attracted me, and I was able to do that. As part of my career, I was able to do that, and that's what really, got me stuck into banking. And then within banking, again, I did a number of different business units, so that was good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that explanation actually. We're both in fintech, and I think just seeing the things, working with the end consumer and really how it can affect people is that's why we do what we do, right? Some people go into banking like, oh, make money, but it's like like maybe, but
No one's a
uh,
charity, but at the same time, end of the day, you gotta be working towards something that's impactful rather than here's another
yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. I've learned that, I guess, the hard way many a times. But that's super fascinating. I saw you really you became the head of technology there. And one question I have is, you know, banks, I feel like there's this, they're very, I'd say, cautious with moving fast. And it's like, how do you kind of see that change or build that change within organizations that, hey, this is worth it, this is worth the risk? Like, can you kind of share a little bit more about
Yeah, it's pretty deep, dude. So I guess the whole risk aversion comes from number of places, right? So, I'm sure you've heard this saying, it's like no one got fired for hiring IBM to do something, right? And it's like because it's
that?
kind of well established, everyone. So there's this whole concept of safety in numbers. And I think, there's a famous quote that I've seen and heard many times, which is bankers race to be first for being number third because they want someone else to go first. They're never the first movers. From that point, but I think the world is very different though, right? And trust me, there's still a lot of that behavior that's going on in the market, but the world is very different because you've had the pandemic, you've had the regulatory burden that continually grows, right? You've got changing customer expectations where, everyone's now shifting to just using Apple as their primary account to versus can't remember last time I used to use my bank card rather than use my
Mm,
credit card or Apple Pay, for example. And then you've got these emerging technologies. So all these factors really start to impact, and you go, if you're going to wait, so what are you waiting for from an adoption point of view? Because you're just going to be the same product and same user experience as everybody else in the street. So what's the edge? So what I'm seeing is like people who are really going to care, I really want to go look after my customers, provide the best service. So it's like a kind of, is it an acquisition play? Is it a retention play? Or is it, I just need, is an efficiency play? It's like really the three things that I see in the market when we work with banks and what motivates them to do things. And everyone's in a different journey and it depends on the size of the bank that's looking to do things. What I found is, as when I was in one of those regulated entities, and it is hard because just because you saw a cool fintech that you think it can help you, doesn't mean you can just bring it in. And that was like kind of my main reasons to start NayaOne because like it's super hard to build stuff these days, right? And everyone's building the same thing, so it kind of feels silly at an industry level. Where if you've got a good team who knows what they're building, and you can just get it and then apply alpha or your differentiation on top of it, that's better. So that's kind of like the build versus buy. It's shifted quite a lot, and I see that trending every year, every quarter. It's just more and more buy. Um, but the problem is there's too many fintechs, right? Or too many solutions in the market. So how do you know what's going to be good for you? How do you? And the other thing is like, um, where people are very optimistic when they are defining their product. So it can do everything, and of course it will do everything. But then when the banker, and this is speaking as an ex-banker, I go, okay, this sounds cool.
mm.
But I go through these 6 to 9 months of onboarding process, third-party risk management. I'll bring you in only to find out you don't do, but your demo was great 9 months ago, right? So that's kind of
Mm.
the thing. So like the market's like, okay, now we need to do a proof of concept. So as an ex-CIO, like the only way I could be sure that the product actually existed was to run a proof of concept. But then if that thing's taking 6 to 9 months every time I do a proof of concept, I don't have velocity. I can't put enough products to either for internal efficiency or for my customers or for my business units. So this doesn't work. And it's not unique to that organization. I just thought because I wasn't an innovation guy, it's like maybe I was doing something wrong. I'm like, this is some voodoo magic. I don't know. How does this go? How do you do this? So I spoke to enough people and I kind of like, okay, you know what? It's not just you. It's actually a problem. Why don't you go get a sandbox? I kind of spent about a year looking into the market, trying to buy one that could help us. And I tried a few things, and I was like, all great products, but none of them built by a banker with the risk appetite that the bank actually needs, or the enterprise, a regulated enterprise needs, with the speed that developers and the user experience that the developers need. So that's kind of, but at that point, I'd spoken to enough people in the industry to go what they were doing. I was like, okay, there's a big enough market. That's kind of where it shifted. But going back to your question with all that context is like, how do you bring that change? I think the way you can bring that change is you have to find that you have to create that safe space, right?
Mm.
Whether that's a
Mm-hmm.
sandbox, whether that's a process, whether that's like you have to reduce that blast radius because you can't put the regulated organization at risk.
Yep.
Um, because as you know, you're in fintech, I'm in fintech. Like it's a regulated entity for a reason because end of the day, it's trying to protect the end customer, right? And so totally respect that, but at the same time, we have an influx of software in the market. So we need to be able to rapidly test and make sense of what's good for us. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
so kind of needed that safe space. And that's, like-minded people within the organization, ability to prove to them that you can do this and reduce the risk and need a safe space. Again, whether it's a sandbox or it's a, you know, process, whatever it is, to move swiftly is how I'd say it.
You just man, you're just explain it so well. It's right. You've taken this process of, hey, it's going to take 6 months to 9 months of this POC, all these things, but it's like what you've done and what it seems like to me, what you're helping is like, hey, how do we kind of take care of a lot of that due diligence, a lot of that testing, a lot of those things that you've seen multiple times over, and then package it up. So now you can kind of like, hey, we've vetted, or at least like the fintechs, the tech companies that are working with our sandbox, we've done all these things. So we can get you to month 5 and take care of all these things that, hey, we've checked all these boxes for you that we know you actually have to check. And so
Yeah,
now you're able to see value, implement, or at least get to an implementation much faster.
yeah.
That is really
Our,
okay.
our customers are able to get to an answer in weeks, right? We're not even
Wow.
going to month 5 because what it does is it just accelerates like their time to value and time to impact. The other thing,
Mm.
as a side benefit, which is really good for the industry, is that founders like you and I don't have to wait 9 months to make that sale, right? Because this is kind of waste time of getting onboarded to run a proof of concept.
Yep.
Um, if you could just run a proof of concept in a couple of weeks, and then the decision, and then like fine, the decision's been made. I'm happy to play along with third-party risk management and do what's required. But at least we know that we can help the customer make that decision. So it's just like super helpful for the founder side or the sales team side as well, to help them accelerate their sales cycle. So that's kind of the thinking.
That's I love it. Man, this is so amazing, and it's just like that's like as we're an earlier stage startup, and we really focus on sales cycles, and because 9 months, I mean 12 months is a long time for a startup, right? Essentially, people, I don't know if you saw, right? There's like well, Wiz, they got what was it, 100 million in 18 months
Mm-hmm.
or something in revenue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so as startups are hungry for growth, how do you kind of balance like shorter sales cycle with also increasing HCPs? And man, you guys are that's really really amazing. How did do you think that is this going to be common across other industries, or how are you kind of are you seeing anything else coming up like this? Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So our team is like, good portion of it's like ex-financial services
Hmm.
guys and girls, and like, that's kind of where we work. But we have had other verticals approach us, and I wouldn't say are even that regulated. But the thing is,
Mm.
enterprise wanting to buy technology, so 1950s, like sure, procurement has its place, third party risk management, it's like cart before the horse. Like, but there's so much software. How do you know which one's good for you? So it is common across other industries.
Mm.
I guess we're just focused on financial services
Yeah, no,
for
yeah,
the minute. Yeah, yeah.
don't branch out. I was just curious because it's you guys have this essentially what I see the kind of magic is like, oh, we gotta like dedicate or hear from legal on all these weird use cases, and all the back and forth. And it's like, wait, let's kind of really separate that out from the organization, which from the get-go is like, oh, they're going to handle that. It's like, no, but we actually know this. And as a company, you learn even more because you talk to all institutions. So you build an even more robust vendor diligence, onboarding, and even better sandbox environment, because
Yeah.
that's your focus and that's not every financial services like focus. How do we make this process better?
That's funny, right? Like, so you talk to a lot of fintechs and are like, okay, who's your biggest competitor? And they will go, oh, bank's IT team. And it's like, okay. And like we go in and like, okay,
Yeah,
there's usually a couple of smart people in the room like, oh yeah, but we can build this. I'm like, yeah, of course, anybody can do anything,
yeah,
but should you?
yeah,
Like, what's
yeah,
the point? Like, we're working with across the industry. We're learning a lot. We're optimizing the product, which means you're able to move point A to point B real smart, real fast. Why would you go and do the same thing we did in our first year and learn
yeah,
through all that
yeah,
mistake and increase your OpEx? So yeah, 100%, 100%. The your point around the sales cycle is an interesting one, and it's something I've been thinking about recently, which is I speak to so many founders because obviously on the other side we've got a couple of hundred all the way up to 1,000 fintechs that are
wow,
integrated and part of the NayaOne network. I hear from a lot of people, it's like, oh man, selling the banks is so hard. I'm going to start selling a fintechs or I'm going to start going into other industries. It's like very common. And I just like, okay, well, I totally get it. I do totally get it. But at the same point, you kind of think about it from an industry point of view. It's like, okay, there's all these smart people building all these smart tech, and now banks aren't going to get it. It's going to go into other industries because, of course, like, people are starting businesses, and if it's going to take 12 to 18 months to sell to a bank or go into one of those um, other distribution channels where they will take 50% of your cut, it's like, well, why did I do this? Well, I'm just going to go better off sell to people who actually want my product and are going to make it easy for me to service them. So it's not a finished thought. It's just a reflection that I'm seeing that trend quite a lot. I'd say one in every six calls or six people I speak to, it's like, yeah, we're thinking into moving into, other verticals or, start selling the fintechs because the sales cycle is much quicker. And it's like, that's great. That's fantastic. All the power. But it's like, then you look at it as like bankers are missing out on the latest
yeah.
tech.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I think yeah, I mean say, that's funny. It's kind of interesting, right? And it's but you're doing something really incredible where I think that's going to really change the industry. I have this crazy thesis, right, where I believe that, community banks, smaller banks, even like mid-sized banks, like
mhm.
they're gonna be able to have all this amazing tech, and be just as powerful as like any other fintech or like the JP
Yep.
Morgans, right? It's
Yep.
just how do you essentially shorten the time to innovation, which is like your focus. Super
Yeah,
fascinating.
that's right. That's right. And most of the if you think about the topic of the conversations that I'm having with banks, it's it's really around growth. It's around
Mm.
retention. It's around efficiency, and then it's like, okay, Gen AI, because we must. And then
Yeah.
and then as a side banter, like come across me, it's like, oh, we're doing Gen. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, oh, we rolled out Copilot. I'm like, okay, bye. Like,
You did a
Copilot.
what?
I
Oh,
rolled out
Copilot.
Copilot. Okay, great. Like, great. Period.
Yeah,
Moving
yeah,
on.
yeah.
It was like, what are your actual use cases? Like, where you like? Yeah, the world's kind of moved on quite a lot in the last 3 months when it comes to Gen AI adoption, and that's like a big focus for us to help people get Gen AI, adoption going, like activating their leadership teams. Unless you know what's the art of the possible, everyone's reading articles and PowerPoints, and it's not no way to adopt that technology.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I completely agree. And so Will from Greenlight, he was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Great guy, and he created a post. Right, it's like AI. Like a year ago, you could have said, "Hey, we're doing AI for back office compliance," like, and then people like 100 people would sign up, and then you can kind of figure out use cases. But now, I comment on it. It's like you have to tell these concrete stories, and like
Mm.
if AI is not a part of it, that's great actually. You can say, oh yeah, we have our own platform, we use large language models because it's the new unlock, but really here are the things, here's the exact jobs to be done and outcomes that you're going to see, right?
Yeah.
And the more concrete that these generative AI startups can do that, and eventually it won't even be Gen AI. I think AI is going to be part of everything. That's important, right? How do you really paint a picture with these concrete use cases? And I think that's with the more interesting startups you're seeing. I think that's what you're really going to see. I'm curious, like, what are some really cool companies you're seeing or interesting use cases that are coming on the
Mm.
platform?
Yeah, I have this rule that I don't call out companies, but I'll tell you the use cases because I think it's unfair to the others because it can be over-indexed from that point.
Yeah,
Um, the From a use case point of view, again, it comes down. It's going to work across like different size of banks, if you and across different countries. So if you think about large organizations, they're very much in the modernization mode, right? So they've got their big platforms in play. Now it's all about, okay, what am I putting in place that's going to improve my onboarding time, increase my efficiency, improve the security from a fraud point of view? Can I use alternative data? And you can apply that to multiple product lines. But that's kind of like a trend I see at a large bank. Where I also see in the large bank space, I see Gen AI being adopted properly because they're sitting on a ton of data. So there's a
yeah,
lot of internal use cases around. So just on Gen AI, like the top three use cases I see are around contact centers, are around developer productivity, and also the third one I would say is around some banks call it human augmentation, but it's really around customer service and sales augmentation, and or back office, but usually in terms of serving the customer in one way or another. So those are like the three main. So what I'm seeing there is, they're not really customer facing AI use cases. It's again in a safe place, etc., etc. So those are where I'm seeing. And it's like generalized because people who've been doing it for a while, there's like doing some crazy good stuff, and there's like people getting started, which is great as well. Um, then you have again in the large bank space, you have I've seen uptick in digital assets adoption, and how life might look when that takes full glory. But then if you go down mid-market and community side, it's very much around growth, right? How can I increase? I mean, it's like there's no secret. It's been around growth deposits, but actually what I'm seeing is people are getting really creative. Like, how can I, someone said this to me, um, BaaS isn't the only way to make money off fintechs. I was like,
mm,
that's actually very fair way to say it because there's a lot of tech out there, companies out there that you can white label and go down that route as an additional service or bake them into your product or sell to their customers, right? So and that's the other big use case I'm seeing on both actually across the pool is embedded finance,
yes, yeah,
which is a growth use case. And again, I'm not including BaaS in there at all.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's
that, and
almost
then
like, oh, good.
yeah. Oh, sorry. The last one I was going to mention is compliance infrastructure. And again, that's AML's always green. Like we have daily usage on from banks and looking for AML solutions to improve their fraud posture. But also, latest uptick I've seen is the compliance infrastructure.
Wow, it's super fascinating. Forgot my point, but
It
I
happens, man.
oh yeah, yeah, sorry, I remember it now. It's so fascinating. I almost call it like reverse BaaS, where fintechs are now kind of selling like their interesting like products or niches. There's one uh, Frida from Join Debbie or Debbie.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
they've actually developed a really do you know have you heard of them?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, a really interesting. We had him on our podcast as well,
Nice.
and
Getting
really
all the cool people.
interesting. Oh yeah, wait, that's hey, you're on here, right? So
And me, yeah.
it's like the cool people. Like, no, yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
you're great. This is great. But it's so fascinating because what I learned when talking with her is, hey, we figured out a psychology of people of a person who's kind of like maybe having poor spending habits. That's really really hard to crack. And so we've essentially built our own models. We built our own decision trees. We figured out how to create our own scoring system to actually, provide rewards in the right way, like credit card points, to have
Mhm.
healthier spending habits, and then also like increase
It's a
like
great product.
engagement.
Great.
Yeah,
Financial education is such an underserved area.
yeah.
Yeah, really like what these guys doing.
And what she was saying is like, oh yeah, like they were first B2C, and then we saw kind of this trend of reselling, and now working with credit unions, especially working with other financial institutions as well. It's kind of like that's really hard to build, and now you can sell this as kind of a new growth channel or a better like customer engagement channel. And so I think it was more just like B2C before, but now it's like, hey, like everyone's a partner. We're no longer competing. It's no longer the 2010s of fintech. It's like, cool. How do we like use all channels to get to the end consumer to provide value?
So the ecosystem selling is the thing, right? Because again, talking about the whole sales cycle being a thing, talking, we're in a privileged spot where we get to chat to everybody from NVIDIA down to person who just started, and literally ecosystem selling is the big thing from
Mm,
everybody, and banks are the same because they're like, okay, where's the channel? Where can I put my product? Where can I get adoption? That's where the game is like, and actually reflecting on that particular point, it's almost the maturity in the market, in the industry. So you're not going, okay, well, I'm gonna, flip up products one at a time. I'm actually going to be part of a river that's already flowing and see if I can, grow as this river grows. And the transaction, to your point, is happening both ways. Like we've seen this here in UK, like, a couple of neobanks, they got up, they stood up, they've been going for 10 years. Now they're all selling their infrastructure
yep, yep, very true.
out to, whoever wants to go next or back to back, like to incumbents. Like it's super fascinating. And why not? That's
Yeah,
two businesses. It's a fair trade.
exactly. I was talking to the team at Greenlight as well. Greenlight's a great example.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
tons of other ones. Greenlight the bank, not the yeah. There's two in the finance space. It's super. Overall, the end benefits are just great for everyone. I was
Yeah.
at I was at SoFi early in
Hmm.
my career, and the like, oh yeah, banks too big to fail. There's this article about just like knocking on banks, and then SoFi bought Galileo, and now they're kind of like, I don't know what else they're up to now, but now it's completely shift, right, with fintechs, and kind of how do we, okay, we've got a great customer base, we've also built some unique tech, let's find other ways to kind of be in the market and help other players in the space. It's very very collaborative. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think like to like for us to summarize it all up, kind of, everything that we're seeing and we're discussing here, like if regardless of which side you are on, and it's no longer a side because banks are selling the fintechs and fintechs are selling the banks and fintechs are selling the fintechs and banks are selling the banks. Like so everyone's trying to sell something to somebody, right? If you're not doing in collaboration, you're not doing in partnerships, you don't have a way to accelerate those things, like the race is literally on right now because anybody who's not being creative in terms of how to go to market, how to get the, be part of the acquisition, like, sorry, from a customer acquisition point of view, and be creative about it, like, yeah, it's going to be bad.
Yeah,
If you're not. But
yeah,
on the positive side, like you get to see a lot of creative business models in the market right now. So that's super 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 beneficial. It's super enjoyable
yeah.
to see.
Well, this has been incredible. It was great having you on. And we here at Fry's and FinTech, we like closed loop systems. And what I mean by that is something that doesn't require KYC, And for our guests, we give them a gift card. And you're in the UK. Usually, you do a random Midwestern restaurant, like a
Oh,
chain,
nice. I'll
like an
take it.
Applebee's. Oh, really? I say I don't know what you guys got over in the UK, but today's random gift card to a Midwestern chain restaurant is Olive Garden. So,
Nice. I even know Olive Garden.
yeah, you know that one. All right,
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah, I'm in US enough.
right. So, have you
I
been to
love
one
it.
before?
Yeah,
A classic. All right.
yeah. Thank you. I
Current,
was not
yeah.
expecting that.
Yeah, of course, of course. But it was great to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you for
Super
having
amazing
me.
conversation. I loved it. I'm sure everyone listening enjoyed it as well. But have a great weekend.
And you, take care. Thank you.